Capitalism has this problem. It always has had this problem. The number of people who are capitalists is small. It's way too small. And that has always meant that capitalists have a problem if they're in a society of universal suffrage, like the United States or Europe or Japan. Why? Because the number of capitalists is small and the mass of people is large. Because the small capitalists make the system work for them and become wealthy and powerful, and the mass of people don't. It's then only a matter of time, and not much time, before the mass of people make the following eureka discovery. We're the majority in a political system that says the majority wins. We should use the political system to undo or reverse the results of capitalism as an economic system. If capitalism makes a few people rich, we'll pass taxes that fix that. We'll take it away from them, and we'll distribute it to everybody else. We'll have a redistributive tax system. Easy to do. Very easy to do. As of tomorrow morning, if you have wealth more than $3 million, it's taxed at 84.6%. Takes a few weeks and you don't have it anymore. There's nothing, seriously folks, there's nothing difficult. We know exactly how to do that. It's easily admitted. There's no problem at all. We move the wealth. The wealthy know this. They know. They're not stupid. They know that they're sitting, and by the way, it's more true now than it's been for 100 years in America. You all know how the wealth is concentrated at the top. That's why the 1%, 99% invented by the Occupy Wall Street became, common knowledge and common language for the American people. A society in which a tiny number of people have a vast amount of wealth and power, and the vast majority of people are having a harder and harder time. The kids have to load up on debt in order to get a college education. They have to borrow money to do any of the things the so-called American dream was supposed to deliver to them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is a system that's fundamentally fragile. How have capitalists stayed in power as long as they have when they're in this terribly vulnerable position? The answer is that they've made a deal with an institution called a political party that turned out to be very useful for them. And the job of the political parties that the capitalists made use of was to create, and there's no other way to say this, a mass base for capitalism. To create a mass of people who would support the capitalist system. That's the job of a party. And if capitalists are going to support a party the way they support the Republicans or the way they support the Democrats, with huge contributions and every kind of support imaginable, which both parties do, then that's because the party is useful for them, is urgent for them. Let's see how the Republican Party does it real quickly. Its job is to bring into its arms, into its organizations, all the people it can that it can persuade to support capitalism. So, for example, since capitalism is dominated by a few large corporations, one of the biggest problems capitalism has is the risk that small and medium-sized businesses who are constantly squeezed to death by the big ones turn against them. It's very important that that not happen. That is a very dangerous enemy for big business. The small businesses whom they overcharge. The small businesses for whom they steal the interest at high rates for loans, all the rest of it. They outcompete them by underselling them and all the rest. So one of the things the Republican Party has always done is embrace the medium and small business. And the party has worked closely with associations that do that. The Chambers of Commerce. What a wonderful institution. You're in it if you're, a corner sandwich shop, and you're in it if you're a 10,000-person factory at the edge of town. You're all members of the Chamber of Commerce. And you're in the Kiwanis Club and the Rotarians and all the rest of that. Very important. These are mass organizations that bring small and big business together. The Republican Party had to, that's not enough. Small and big and medium big is still much too small. So they found another ally in this country. It works differently in each country. They found the ally of the social conservative, the person who is committed to the notion that they're living 1 or 2 centuries back. That everybody is happily married, has 2.5 children, a dog, a station wagon, all of that. Very important. We love that. We believe in family values. If you vote for us, we will recreate the family you imagine you once had. That kind of thing. But very important. We love religion. You're a religion, we love you. And you vote for us and we will help your church. We will help we love you. And the deal, or if you like to shoot things that are alive and make them dead, we love guns. We love you with guns. More guns. Here. Take it to bed with you. Take it to school. Sew it into your left leg. We don't care. Because here's the deal. You support free enterprise. You support the capitalist system. You support private enterprise. And we will support you. That's the deal. You vote for the party that endorses the capitalist system with gusto. And when it gets into power, we will not only make it serve us, the big businesses, but we will help them give you some reward. We'll help your little church. We will help you. You gun people, here's some more. Have some more. Things that shoot more bullets in less time. Whatever it is you like, we'll do that. We don't care. That's not our issue. Of course privately we think you're nuts. But it's very important. The base is always difficult. It's always tense. It's never secure. The church people, for example, have for years been very angry at the Republican Party because they think they're being played with, which of course they are. They're being taken for a large, long ride. They're being the mass base for a big business, and the big business gives them a stamp with one of their people on it. Huh? And then they feel terrible. They didn't get the abortion abolished. They didn't get gay marriage stopped. They didn't get the things that they were concerned about because that's never the issue. The job of these parties is to give a mass base. And the Democrats are exactly the same, but it's a different group. The job of the Democrats is to bring in the working class. Always bring in the working class. Bring in the minorities. Bring in the women. Bring in the academics and intellectual. Bring them in. Get them to support free enterprise any way you can, and give them something. Give them a public university system. They want that, you give them that. The minorities, they want to be able to have lunch at a lunch counter. Give them that. Who cares? Well, we know that there are all kinds of people who care, but the people who are making the decision, they don't care. It's not their issue. That's not what the party's about for them. And it's wonderful to have two parties, because then when one party, for some reason, can't hold its base together so that the people at the top go, hey, this party isn't working real well, you dump them and get the other one. And you play with it until it doesn't break. Then you get and you tell the mass of people, see, when we're not happy, we Americans, with the one party, we got the other party. And after a while, the majority of people realize this game is absurd, and they don't bother voting anymore, do they? Because for them, these are details, they're not that interested. They don't go to church, they don't care much about guns. If gay people want to get married, their reaction is, haven't they suffered enough? I had to do that. That's an old joke, and I had to try it. But sometimes neither of the parties work as a base for capitalists. Sometimes they both fall apart. It can be because of internal stresses and strains, the anger of a group that was brought in and played with, taken advantage of, gotten to support capitalism and given almost nothing in exchange. That sometimes happens. That's not what's happening so much now. What's happening now is the system itself hasn't got enough reward. Too many people are having too hard a time. And so both on the Republican side and the Democratic side, it's not working. The parties whose job it is to hold everything together can't do it anymore. The anger of particularly white male, but not only, but particularly white male workers in the ages of 25 to 50, they're voting for Mr. Trump in huge numbers. They're angry. Nothing has worked for them. Nothing has. This game is disgusting for them. They're angry. They want out. And this guy is as good a way as any. It doesn't take much of a risk. He's a successful businessman. So if you're a Republican and voting for a successful businessman, sort of that's in the cards, that's okay. And on the other side, same thing. Overwhelming young people entering into the political arena, loaded up with debt, loaded up with crappy job prospects, loaded up with crappy income prospects, told that they live in an American society where they're going to live better than their parents, and the truth is they're not going to even achieve what their parents had. They are, what are you talking about? This is not I'm out. And they enjoy it. What do you mean I can't vote for he's a socialist? Good. It's like doing exactly what your parents told you not to do. It's delicious. Of course I'm going to vote for that old man socialist. And the more it freaks out my parents, the more I'll tell them about how much fun it was going in. But it's really, and the parties, but it's very serious. The parties can't do it. The parties can't do it. The election, the victory of Mr. Sanders in the state of Michigan last night is an amazing thing. That he could do it. It's as amazing as Iowa, it's as amazing as New Hampshire. These are very serious failures of the Democratic Party to do what it's supposed to do. Mr. Sanders is saying, I don't like capitalism. I prefer something else. That's been impossible in the United States for half a century. And he's making it look easy. It's very important. He's teaching Americans, all of you, but millions of Americans, that there are millions of people who agree with him. That's been the unspoken, unspeakable secret of American politics. Because it comes right out and says, capitalism? Who needs it? Who wants it? It's dead. It's old. It's finished. It's done. We don't want it. We don't need it. We're going elsewhere. This is an amazing breakdown of one of the central pillars of a surviving capitalist system. The Soviet Union did not collapse because it was attacked from outside. It fell apart inside. The United States is falling apart inside. It needs a mass base, and it's losing both of them, the Republicans and the Democrats. In Greece, in 2012, suddenly, the two parties, like our Republican and Democrat, who had exchanged prime ministers back and forth, just like we exchanged Republicans and Democrats back and forth for 40 years, suddenly got no votes. They got less than a third together. They used to get 3/4 together. And up comes a little corner left-wing party, Syriza, which is now the government, has been the government for 2 or 3 years. Unthinkable. The great they're gone. The capitalists are now having to make deals with people who proudly say they hate capitalism. Whether they do or not is another matter, but there's a new game for them. And the Greek capitalists have been showing what they think about it, which is they're leaving. They're moving their assets out of Greece as fast as they can. They've been doing it for a long time, so it's very bad for Syriza because their situation is disintegrating as they try to hold on. That's the decision they made. Where's the United States going? I don't know. But nobody, the chaos that you see, the anxiety at the top. I don't know how many of you saw it, but every year something called the American Enterprise Institute, a think tank of the right wing, goes to a place called Sea Island off the coast of Georgia, very ritzy resort, very private. You have to fly into an airport on the mainland and then go over by boat. And they had their annual meeting a little while ago, and all the big wigs of the Republican Party were gathered to talk about what to do with Mr. Trump. But it wasn't just the big wigs of the Republican Party. There were a whole bunch of Democratic leaders there, and one of the people who was spotted, and I had to admit later that he was there, was Arthur Sulzberger, the owner and operator of the New York Times. Oh, I see. We don't have time for the Republican Democratic junk anymore. We're all in this together, because this dissolution of the mass base party is a danger to the system as a whole. The New York Times can't decide between Mrs. Clinton, whom they're desperately trying. If you saw the first headline this morning, Trump wins Michigan. Sanders strong. They couldn't say, he won! They couldn't. But that's who they are. They couldn't do it. He's strong. He's strong. He won. That's the shorter word. It's better to put up there. It's easier. They couldn't. They're very, very scared. Now the last point. What happens to a capitalism when the political parties, whose job it is to create the mass base, or to use the language of Gramsci, to give hegemony to the capitalist system, so it has the allies to keep. When that fails, when the parties disintegrate, when the mass of people desert the parties, will no longer play the game of giving their approval to capitalism in exchange for the crumbs they get, what happens then? No. What happens then is you've got to now control the society. You can't have it by consent. You can't persuade them. They're angry, they're bitter. That's where we are. We're getting a country more and more angry about the job situation, the income situation. Now you've got to force it. That's called, when the government becomes the partner in the control, in the shutting down, in the ending. There'll be no dissent, there'll be no demonstrate, there'll be none of that. And if you do it, we will hurt you. We will throw you in jail. If there's too many of you to accommodate in our jail, we will dump you in the ocean. We won't. We understand you don't accept us anymore. Okay? We tried it. It worked real well. We have Republicans and Democrats for 150 years. Okay, it doesn't work forever. Nothing does. And now we're going to have to, especially this happens if they're threatened, if they can see the revolution coming. Mr. Hitler came to power in January of 1933. Very important. The Depression had hit in 1929. Was 4 years into the Depression. In those 4 years, two political parties took off inside Germany, the Socialist Party and the Communist Party. By 1932, the last elections the Germans had, the Socialists and Communists together, 50% of the vote. And they were out in the streets, and they were talking the debate in the street was between the Socialists, who wanted to take power but not too violently, and the Communists, who wanted to take power and didn't worry about how violent it might be. And the mass of the German capitalists didn't know what to do. Their conventional parties had disintegrated. Their equivalent of Republican and Democrat, the mass of people were so hurt by the Depression, so bereft. Depression hit hard in Germany, like it did here. They were so angry and so bitter. Think of the Trump forces and the Bernie Sanders forces a year or two down the road when things have gotten worse. They were really bitter. So the German capitalists made a decision. They turned to the only other political force that could give them a mass base. All the old ones were gone. They had this crazy, weird, short, dark-haired fellow from another country. Hitler, Austrian, brown. These blonde, blue-eyed Aryans were in love with a little brown, short guy with a funny mustache who no one took seriously.
And a quarter Jewish.
What? A quarter Jewish, perhaps, yes. Perhaps, yes. But the capitalists who didn't like him, who made fun of him, who thought he was a bully, a clown, a loudmouth, an uncultured, uncool. Jesus, you got the whole list of things we say about Mr. Trump. Or, as I learned recently, his original family name, Drumpf. Stephen Colbert did a horrible, horrible job on poor Mr. Trump. But here's my point. Turning to a fascist, to a person who says, I'm not about the usual conventions of politics. I'm not a Republican and a Democrat, or the German equivalent. I'm here to tell you, you want to make a deal with us? Fine. You give us the government, we'll take care of all the opposition. Don't worry about it. You don't need a mass base. We'll kill them. We'll terrorize them. We'll drive them out of the country, or we'll arrest them, or we'll gas them to death. We'll take care of it. There'll be no unions to worry about. There'll be no communists and no socialists and nothing. That's what happened. Fascism is when you can't hold this unequal system together with the mass base party apparatus. We're watching both parties tremble because they can't do it. They can't paper over the contradictions of this system. The poverty, the debt, the bad-looking future, the difficulty of the young people who are voting overwhelmingly against what exists. And this system is now going to have to figure out, can we recoup the mass base in the two parties? And it don't look real good right now. And if Mr. Trump wins, he will exacerbate all of that. His commitment to evangelicalism is thin. Very thin. And if Mrs. Clinton becomes the candidate, which the apparatus wants, she will come in under a cloud of disagreement and hostility and criticism from an outside of her party, but from half of the people inside the party. How she's going to govern and how that's going to work, very questionable. Whatever she says, you should all be aware, she and her people are watching in stunned disbelief at the disintegration of of their party. Exactly the way the establishment of the Republican is looking in stunned disbelief as Mr. Trump makes monkeys out of them. Over and over again. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to stop it. But be very worried, because there is a solution that has happened before when this peaceful arrangement of keeping capitalism going breaks down. What happens then, if you have that merger of the government as the partner with a heavy fist to keep this system going against all of the opposition, that's fascism. That's Italian fascism, Japanese fascism, Ukrainian fascism, German fascism, and so on. Fascism has always lurked there as the fallback position when everything else doesn't work. We used to think of that as a historically interesting question. It's now coming to be part of our immediate situation.